Get started. We have a pretty aggressive agenda today with lots of items. So welcome everyone to the UPD Board Meeting. Destiny is my assistant. Harmony, would you be willing to take a roll call, please?
Director Bradley.
Here.
Director Brems. Director Daly.
Present.
Director Flint. Here. Director Keegley. Here. Director Litvak. Here. Director Olson.
Present.
Director Peterson.
Here.
Director Prokopis.
Here.
Director Silvestrini.
Here.
Director Stevenson.
Here.
Thank you, Harmony. We'll move on to our second agenda item, which is public comment. Is there anyone here who would like to comment to the board? Harmony, do we have anyone?
I don't see any on the Zoom.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to agenda item number 3 with our UPD update from Sheriff Rivera.
Good morning. I'm going to keep the update fairly short because I know we have a lot on the agenda, but my update this month is really just to let you know some of the really great things that our department has been doing. So I'm going to start with a letter that I received from the federal government, the U.S. Department of Justice, and they sent a letter out thanking the Metro Game Unit and Lieutenant Schoenfeld and his detectives for all the fantastic work and professionalism they've been doing for the past 5 years. So they did give us a long letter of history of things that they have been doing. I'm going to send this out, and really they are truly making a huge impact with the gang activity and the narcotics, the drugs, because they go hand in hand now. So our gang unit works with our DEA unit, and that's where the big difference is being made. But for them to be recognized by the Department of Justice, that's huge. That's a big thing. So I just wanted to mention that. We'll send this out so you have all the details of what they have done. We also had a homicide out in Magna. And I just want to thank all of our detectives that worked on that, and Magna and Kearns precincts. They were able to solve that homicide and make an arrest. So that was a good thing for our community to make sure that person was off the street. Also, in recognition of our detectives, again, our violent crimes unit, I'd say probably about 3 months ago, I was at a sheriff's meeting, and I was talking to Sheriff White out of Grand County. We talked a little bit about the difficulty of how it is to solve homicides. I explained the experience that our detectives have, and I offered up our assistance because anytime there's a homicide unsolved, that means there's still a killer out there. So our detectives, Chief Obi and his crew, Sergeant Ron Allen, his detectives, will be giving you all the names and what they did later because the case still hasn't gone to court, but they truly dedicated a lot of time, and they were able to help Grand County identify a suspect, and that was screened with their district attorney's office, and that was all over the news last week. But I do want you to know that UPD played a big part of that as well, and Sheriff White has thanked us for our service, so we're super proud of them. And then the last thing is I want to brag a little bit about our chiefs. So, and some of them are back here. I think they have participated. Chief Obi? Yeah. So I had them write this up. So I'm just going to read it because it's a little bit long, but it tells the whole story about what happens when you're a law enforcement officer. It doesn't matter what rank or what you're doing 24/7, but this really goes to show you what great people we have. So, and Chief Dial wrote this up for me, but he put, while attending the FBI National Academy It was a semi-annual retrainer. The following members of UPD, Deputy Chiefs Steve DeBride, Dale Craig, Chris Elmy, Wayne Dial, and their spouses were returning from a cold case homicide review in Onion Creek area of Moab, Utah. The area was very rugged and only accessible by ATV or UTV and off-road vehicles. There was no cell service accessible. Members were about 50 miles in the backcountry heading back towards Highway SR 128 when the group came upon another group, 4 motorcyclists. The father, who was a victim, 76-year-old, and I won't say his name, had just crashed off his motorcycle on a 10 to 15% downgrade, and it was on a hairpin turn. His family members included his daughter, her husband, and her brother. The daughter was hysterical due to the father's injuries, and were able to be settled down by the individuals there. Steve DeBride and Dale Craig assessed the immediate medical needs, and that Mr. Curry had struck his head while wearing a helmet. He still suffered miscellaneous head injuries and a potential broken hand. Because of the remoteness of the area, no phone or radio contact for an emergency service response, and the expected delay to reach any assistance, it was decided by the group to transport the victim by UTV. He was carefully loaded onto Chief Chris Omby's UTV. When Chris's prior motorcycle riding experience came in handy, he volunteered to ride the victim's motorcycle back to the Red Cliff Lodge, which was about 20 miles of rugged terrain. And Chief Omby rode this motorcycle, and they said it was just incredible to see him be able to just jump on a motorcycle and do this. So it included about 20 to 30 streams of riverbeds and on a motorcycle that had street tires. So it really wasn't suited for the terrain. Chief Dial drove Chief Omby's UTV with the victim in it, along with their wives, who monitored the victim and provided water and pain relief medication while they were headed to get help, which is 14 miles from Moab. And then to expedite delivery to the Moab Regional Hospital and try to limit any injury, they decided to use the UTV, and Chris Omby and Wayne Dial basically with no lights and sirens, just basically took him over to the regional hospital. He was delivered to the emergency entrance where medical staff took over. There was lots of communication with the family who indicated that their group had came from Clinton, Utah, and they had no ability to transport back Mr. Curry's motorcycle. So the family worked with other members that were attending that training to make sure that his motorcycle got back to Clinton and that the victim's needs medical care was taken care of. But this is just a great example of how the chiefs just immediately, their training kicked in and they helped this individual. He's 76 years old. The chances of him surviving something like that without any help and the family being hysterical, that they truly saved a life. So just wanted to say thanks. And since Chris is the only one in the room, thank you, Chris. And all the other chiefs know that I was going to mention their name today. That's probably why they didn't show up. But anyway, that's all my update is today. We will be presenting our budget a little bit later, and I'll have more information for you regarding the budget. Thank you. And I'll send you this too.
Thank you to the team, the incredible harrowing stories. So thank you. Thanks, Chief. Appreciate it. All right. Let's move on to item agenda number 4, the Slavisa report, and Director Keegley and Frank Nakamura.
So basically, we felt that it was really important that the rest of the Slavisa, or the rest of the UPD board that are not members of the Slavisa team understand the situation that Slavisa is in right now, which is pretty dire. Pretty dire. We thought we would have 3 years to make some changes, but with inflation, wage wars, fund balance issues, that has shrunk. So I've asked Frank to just give a real concise briefing, and then if you have any questions, you can come to us. And get some.
Well, first of all, I mean, I wouldn't classify this dire. It is planning that we need to do. Circumstances have changed, costs. Of course, you're fully aware of the increasing of costs. So what we have to do a strategic plan and look down the road and see what we need to do. So we are going to have a workshop. So I want you to be aware that on July 14th, the Slovisa members are going to have a workshop, and we're going to facilitate a discussion among our Slovisa members. This is primarily focused on the Slovisa members because the mayors and councils of our Slovisa member entities will have to make some decisions. Not Slovisa, but Slovisa members, and we are facilitating that discussion. Under Sheriff Jake Peterson has graciously agreed to facilitate that meeting for us. So that is what we're going to discuss. We also need to look at legislation. At minimum, we are at a property tax cap. As you know, Slovisa is funded primarily or solely by property tax right now. So we have to go to the legislature. So we may ask you, members of the UPD, to support us on that. We may ask for your assistance as we go to the legislature. So that is going to be the workshop. Hopefully, we can get some long-term solutions. We're just trying to adjust to the changing environment that we're in right now. I'm sure all of you do that with your councils and mayors. We're going to do that on July 14th. They're certainly invited to come if you want.
So basically, since we're at that tax cap, the top of it, there's no movement above that unless we go to the legislative body and ask them to raise that tax cap, or we have to find other funding sources, whether that be fees or energy taxes. So in order to make a kind of decision of which direction we're going to go, we have outside experts that are going to come and explain, you know, the pros and cons of each of those different funding sources, and then we will take that information back to our individual councils, town councils, and metro township councils to vote on what they want us, where we want to go, and then come back as a solution and vote on that. We do have a short time frame to get this done.
Okay. How does that affect the budget this year?
Not this year.
Okay.
No, it's actually looking into the 2023.
Okay.
Year after.
Frank, I'm not sure I know what the tax cap is. So you don't just have normal truth in taxation and go out?
Oh, no. Well, we do have truth in taxation, and but at the same time, they have the state legislature and statutes have a cap of 0.0023. As municipalities also have a cap, but there's a much larger gap for municipalities, and we are at 0.002299 with this recent property tax increase. So we're going to have to go in and raise the cap. Yes, I don't understand caps, because we do have to go through truth in taxation anytime we need to raise property taxes, and that should be the process. But this is the legislature, and they put this cap on us, so we're going to have to go in and increase it in order if we're going to want to raise property taxes in the future. And right, yes.
Sorry to clarify this. So do you have, with the increases in the tentative budget, are you using fund balance for that, or do you still have?
Can I speak to that?
Yes, please.
Slovisa, you know, is really the largest member for UPD. And like the other members have considered, Slovisa had underexpand, which is the term that you would be more familiar with, over the past 3 years that allowed Slovisa, that the sheriff is included in the tentative budget, a use of that precinct level fund balance that will be sufficient to, cover the increases for Slovisa this year.
So Mayor Stevens.
Didn't we do an 8.5 for Slovisa?
Yeah, we,
thank
yes, we retained their precinct fund balance at the 8.5 level, 8.5%. And so that the difference between where their fund balance sat and that 8.5%, fund balance retention, that has been used, budgetary use of fund balance to take care of that.
For this coming.
Right,
Yeah,
uh-huh.
well, for Mayor Stevenson, the Slovisa meeting follows this meeting. And in today's meeting, we will be discussing this fund balance. It was sort of, this meeting was before the Slovisa meeting, so a decision on the fund balance has not been made, but I would anticipate we are going to use fund balance, yes, to cover some of the.
It's important to note that's the precinct level fund balance at UPD and not the Slovisa entity fund balance.
Right. So the Slovisa entity fund balance will be discussed and to what extent we will use it. There is a recommendation of going down using half, 8.5%.
That's at the precinct level.
Yeah.
So Slovisa has a fund balance, kind of like a general fund, and then they have precinct balances. And the precinct balance is similar to what we had talked to all of you about your precinct balances. And that's, I chose to do the 8.5 because we had met with almost all Slovisa. We didn't have an opportunity to meet with Copperton, but we met with everyone else. And I had to make a decision for tentative budget because Slovisa doesn't meet until after the UPD board meeting. So I had to just choose, and so that's part of my tentative budget, but Slovisa can change that in the next meeting, if that makes sense. But it came out of their precinct fund balances or under expend, not the general fund of Slovisa.
Jim?
That does provide some challenges to Slovisa members. We have a policy that says that we need to have a fund balance that's double the 8.5 almost. And so we're going to have to.
That's for the general fund.
That's Slovisa.
There is no policy
okay,
on the
you're right,
precinct
you're right,
fund
that's
right
correct.
now.
On the general fund, yeah.
So nevertheless, that is going to diminish the fund balances in the precinct, and we know that. But it's also for a good reason.
Right.
It's not frivolous by any means, but it still provides some challenges for us that we're going to have to discuss. Now, this is a tentative budget, so we can move forward with the tentative budget and still have these discussions. And I think you can expect us to, maybe weigh in on this as well.
Right.
And Mayor Silvestrini has had his hand up for a very long time, so I'm not sure if it's regarding this.
I'm
or-
sorry. Mayor Silvestrini, my apologies.
No problem. I know that it's hard to see that. And just so you know, I started to experience some potential COVID symptoms. So that's why I'm not there in person. I have, anyway, I just get a vacation, I guess. So I have a question, and I know that perhaps you guys haven't had a chance to talk about this since you're having another meeting about funding for Slovisa. But wearing my other hat for the League of Cities and Towns, what Frank mentioned is that you might be trying to look at either franchise or telecommunications franchise tax to try to fund this. I don't know if that's the plan or not. I'll just give you a heads up that there may be resistance by the League of Cities and Towns to the idea of a special district exercising that authority. It was approved and legislation was passed to permit the MSD essentially to do that. And so I don't know if you're thinking about trying to do it some way through that mechanism, which might potentially work. I don't know. I'm just curious, and maybe you don't know these things yet, but I guess keep us updated and let us know how we can help. We certainly want to preserves, the Slovisa members as in UPD and make sure that this is affordable for them.
Well, yeah, everything will be open for discussion on the table. That sales, energy and use tax and telecommunications tax will be open for discussion. Certainly, we'll have to vet it for legality. But it is on the table. We will be talking about everything, all alternatives that are possibly available. All the options, of course, will have to be examined closely once we get to those options. But we will be talking about that. Yes.
What if a Slovisa entity already has imposed that tax? Or is that not the case?
My understanding is no Slovisa entity has imposed that tax.
Well, maybe that's for Slovisa, but yeah, so my understanding is there's enough precinct fund balance right now to make the tentative budget work for this year as it's proposed, and that may change a little bit, but beyond this year, once those precinct fund balances are pretty much probably drained down to pretty low level, you don't get additional funding next year is going to be, yeah.
That's why I use the word dire.
Yeah.
Well, and we will have to deal with the property tax. I mean, that right now is the sole source of revenue, and we'll need to increase the cap.
Well, I think as most of us know, property tax doesn't adjust for inflation. So it erodes the amount of value you can get out of it. Director Flynn.
I find it a bit problematic that we're discussing another governmental entity's financial status with UPD. As far as when the cities left Slovisa members are the ones that have to decide where we want to go with either increases or cut service. I think debating what we do and where the money's coming from is beyond the purview of this body.
Our whole purpose for bringing it up is so that you'd see the
Yeah.
big picture.
I get it, but the reality is those taxes for franchise fees, they will only generate within the whole of the the metro townships, maybe $400,000 to $700,000.
Yeah, you know what, I agree
That's
with you
why-
that we shouldn't be
It
discussing
shouldn't
it
even
here.
be, it's a separate governmental
But I
entity.
do appreciate
No, our intent.
knowing what
Right, our
Slovisa's
intent
situation
was
is.
just so that all of you who are not Slovisa members know what we're doing, that we are having these meetings. I didn't want any misunderstandings. You might hear about our meetings and what we're doing in there. And no, I think it was just planning. So I think our partners need to know what we're doing. So that's the purpose of today.
Right. Totally.
Are there any other questions or comments from the board members? Thank you. Director Prokopis, I did turn on the thing on my screen, so I'll pay better attention.
I just wanted to thank Frank and them for presenting today. It was out of transparency, and that's all. It was recommended by the board that is the committee that is looking at this, that everyone needs to be aware sooner than later. We don't want to bring this up in the 11th hour. It was informational is all, but it was directed by the subcommittee. So thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just say that I think if you're going to be asking other members of UPD and or other municipalities for support in raising the ability to levy additional property taxes, it's smart of you to keep us apprised of what you're doing.
So thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for the update, and we'll wait to hear and learn more as Slovisa makes its decisions moving forward. Thank you for
Thank you.
making us aware of the situation. All right, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is a approval of surplus resolution. Chief Manager.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So this exciting agenda item is the approval of surplus. In your packs, primarily small items, mostly computers, tech-related, electronics, things of that nature. So it's fairly small, but obviously we want to follow the rules and make sure that we're treating the taxpayers' property with great care. So we submit that for your.
Any questions from the board? If not, I entertain a motion.
This is Carolyn Quigley. I will make a motion to approve resolution to declare certain UPD assets as surplus property, resolution number 22-05-01.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Hearing none, passes. Thank you, Chief. All right, we will move on to our next agenda item, which is the 2021-2022 amended fee schedule. Lisa.
Thank you. During this past fiscal year, UPD received a donation. The board has previously approved that donation of a software that allows unlocking cell phones and downloading that data, which is critical for certain investigation cases. Deputy Chief Chris Omby has received the nod from the software company to perform that service for other entities, other agencies that need cell phones unlocked or the data downloaded, and that we could charge a fee to do so. The fee that is presented, $1,000 to unlock and download the data, that of course a locked phone, or $300 to download the data only if the phone is not locked. Again, Deputy Chief Chris Omby could discuss the amount of the fee, but I'm presenting to you the request to add this to the fee schedule so we can allow that service, perform that service for other law enforcement agencies.
Any questions from the board? This is an introduction. Okay, then we'll move to our public hearing. I'll need a motion to enter a public hearing, please. Director Prokopis, did you have a question, sir?
No. I don't know why that's still up. I don't know if you have to remove it.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to go to public hearing.
So moved.
Thank you. This is a roll call vote. Harmony?
Director Bradley,
Aye.
Director Brems,
Aye.
Director Daly,
Aye.
Director Flint,
Aye.
Director Keeley,
Aye.
Director Litvak,
Aye.
Director Olson,
Aye.
Director Peterson,
Aye.
Director Prokopis,
Aye.
Director Silvestrini,
Aye.
Director Stevenson.
Aye.
We're in the public hearing. Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment? Harmony, anyone online? I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. Now moving on to our last item as it pertains to this increase. I'm happy to entertain any discussion or a motion to approve the resolution.
I move that we approve resolution 22-05-02- of 2022. Resolution amending consolidated fee schedule. Is that the one?
Thank you, Director Flint. Yes.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mayor Stevenson. All in favor, please say, or does this require a roll call here?
To close the public, I'm sorry.
No. To vote on this resolution for the fee schedule, or is it a
Yes.
voice vote acceptable?
Because I'm not sure, let's go with the roll call.
Okay. Harmony, that's okay. Thank you, sir.
Director Bradley,
Aye.
Director Brems,
Aye.
Director Daly,
Aye.
Director Flint,
Aye.
Director Keeley, Director Litvak,
Aye.
Director Olson,
Aye.
Director Peterson,
Aye.
Director Prokopis,
Aye.
Director Silvestrini,
Aye.
Director Stevenson.
Aye.
All right, that passes. Thank you. We will move on to our next agenda item, which is the tentative budget. I'll turn the time over to Lisa and the sheriff.
Sorry. First, trying to prepare here.
No problem. Take your time.
Okay, let me just make sure I'm on the right item.
Yeah.
We're on the, okay, on the budget. Sorry about that. We are gonna have Rick go make some copies that we realize is not in the presentation that you have, and it has to do with the shared services increases that I know that we still need to make some clarifications for some of you that have questions on that, so he's gonna go make a copy.
We do not have the presentation yet, because
I know, but in their packet, it's not in their packet, so
Right.
we'll present that to you in a minute. So today I want to present to you the 2023 budget. I first want to begin by thanking all of you for your support. We know it's been tough, and it always is, because you have your own budgets, and we're trying to get you the information as soon as we can. And we know that there are changes sometimes that send us into a tailspin quite often, actually, during the budget process. But we want to thank you for all of your support. You invested in this department, and especially during the unprecedented market increase for the officers in November. So I want to thank you for that. This tentative budget includes a 5% COLA and a merit increase based on tenure for all employees, a 5% market adjustment for civilians, and a surgical approach for sworn officers to get them back into that top 3 market, even though we do know once July comes around and all the departments do the same thing, that we may not be in the top 3 for very long, but we do know that the surgical approach is to attempt to get there. This will also address the board's request to consider the civilian pay, which has been a top priority for myself and my team. And we continue to look forward to the board's goal for the sworn market increases and the placement in that top 3. The tentative budget also reflects costs in operating and equipment supplies. An example of that is gasoline. As we know, it has doubled since our last time we presented our budget. So it does include items like that. It also increases protection to mitigate the evolving risk that our officers face in this community. And also our investment in accountability and transparency by enhancing our body camera and data storage program. This still will not get us a body camera for every officer, but we're getting closer and closer every year. So that is our ultimate goal, is for every sergeant and patrol officer to have body cameras. During the fiscal year 2021 and 22 budget years, there were purchases of certain items that we delayed because we knew that with Taylorsville leaving that we had to cut over $4 million in our shared services. So this budget restores some of those routine costs like radio and computer replacements that we had delayed an extra year. It also calls for new funding for the recently established public order unit and our drone program. This will be our first formal investment in these 2 new efforts, and they are already providing benefits to our agencies and communities that we serve. This year's budget process also included multiple discussions with individual members in reference to the accumulation of fund balances at the precinct member level. Board members and governing board bodies of our member communities provided input and direction regarding budgetary use of precinct fund balances to mitigate the overall increase in member assessments. The tentative budget demonstrates the value of the overall organization, the transparency, budgetary detail, and consistency reflected herein will prove to be invaluable as we continue to demonstrate to our members, residents, and partners of the priorities of UPD, first of which is the safety of our communities that we serve. I want to thank our fiscal team for their tireless commitment to the financial health of our organization and their work in preparing the budget that we're going to present here today. I also want to thank all of our precinct chiefs. They have been extremely helpful, and as well as Under Sheriff Peterson, Chief Mazarin, and Brittany Tarzan has helped us with several of the presentations. So I want to make sure I thank them. And really all of our organizations within our organization, we've had to rely on several different people and their input and having them gather data. And so I want to thank all that were involved in getting us to this point. So with that, we'll present the tentative budget. We are still waiting for Rick to bring us the copies of the share service, but we can go get started with get help there. We're going to just hand out the budget books. We ask that you follow along with what we're doing because we know everybody tends to go right to theirs. But if you will help us by following along, we can explain, Lisa will explain the numbers in the book. And when Rick gets here, we will go over the shared services and answer any questions on the shared services piece. See all this teamwork? This is exactly what I was talking about. We can't do it by ourselves. Yeah. Thank you.
So I'll just add a little bit. The sheriff didn't mention that budgetary use of precinct fund balance. This year that we're finishing, fiscal year 2022, is the third fiscal year with our individual precincts at the member level. This I think is a really good thing. When all of our law enforcement functions were in the general fund, there was a routine, very large budgetary use of fund balance that really did not get the discussion or the consideration that maybe it needed to have. Now that one of the goals of any budget process, of course, is the budget establishes the priorities for the organization because that's where the money is appropriated. But the budget also should provide a method of accountability for those that have budgetary responsibility. And by separating our precincts into their individual fund, what we've done is to actually give those precinct chiefs and you as members, some local control as our board members like, but also gives those precinct deputy chiefs, gives them a method of accountability for staying within their appropriations. It's a great thing. Now the underexpend, and we've talked about this as we've met individually, the underexpend that has grown or accumulated these fund balances at the precinct level is really due to staffing shortages or vacancies in our staffing. We know the last couple of years with the movement from one agency to another, and then every industry is having trouble filling vacancies right now. We budget for the needs of these individual precincts, but if it's impossible to fill those staffing, there will be underexpend and continue to be underexpend year after year, unless there's never a day without an officer. And we expend exactly what we budget for those wages. So it's important also to note that these budgetary balances are growing in operational only funds. The large equipment is purchased from the general fund, like the Bearcat or other large pieces of equipment. Our vehicles are purchased from our vehicle fund. And so the precinct level is really only operations, and for the most part, it is wages and benefits for your officers. And so the use of the budgetary fund balance for operations, as long as we're careful of the level that we drop to, upholding that fund balance as a percentage of the revenues or that the budget that's needed in a fund that has no infrastructure, in a fund that has no large capital outlay. I feel is very appropriate as long as our members, our board, administration realize that we need to be mindful of the level that we take that down to. So again, at the precinct level, our fund balances over year after year will grow to some extent unless we're 100% fully staffed all the time, which is of course the goal, but has never been the case. So with that, we can take a look at how the budget is laid out. Oh, and Rick has brought the paper. Do you want to just talk about that one, or do you want me to?
Let's go through this and then we can talk about the shared services increases, and then we'll also talk about our ARPA requests that the board said add to the budget book. So it's in here as well.
And the budget book is really laid out the same as has been the case the last couple of years, where, you know, the beginning part, the introductory part, you can look at, but really the meat and potatoes of the numbers starts after the tab that says budget. With our general fund, which is our shared services, being presented as the first fund. Again, you can look at the sharing formula, how the sharing formula changed. This is under the budget, under the shared services tab. Again, it's based on that initial 20% for the shared services that the county-wide functions use, 80% for our municipal members. That 80% then is calculated based on caseload, population, taxable value. On this page, you can see also at the bottom, there's a little extra table that shows the change. How did the sharing formula change from?
Interrupt you for 1 minute. We had a chat message from Mayor Silvestrini asking if the packet could be emailed to those that are online.
This entire book probably can't be. I'm wondering how we do that.
We will create a PDF and send this to everyone.
They need it now.
We can send some of this. We can send some of it. It really matches what we provided in our individual one-on-one meetings. So if you have that,
This piece we do.
and they have that from their individual meetings,
The numbers changed. since we presented.
but I sent them an update the other day with this in it to Lori and the mayor. But we will get, Rick, can you email that really
Well,
quickly?
Davidson.
Well, I've got, this is what I received in the packet, or the last,
The numbers
and it
have
matches.
changed.
Yeah, and it matches. Uh-huh.
Okay.
This isn't that big. It's more bulk.
Well, yeah, we can.
We will get you, we'll get you the couple of pages that we're talking about. Rick just ran to get his computer.
There haven't been any changes. I'm less concerned. I just didn't know if there were.
I didn't hear. After the shared services, which is UPD General Fund, we have, of course, individual tabs for each of our member communities. And then as we get towards the back of the book, the fleet fund is presented along with the county-wide fund has its own section, the ARPA requests, and then you can, there's a tab that our HR director, Deputy Chief Ackerman, provided to discuss the compensation changes that are included in the budget. One thing that I wondered, and it is actually shown on the agenda as well, is how does the board want to go about discussing the tentative budget? I mean, obviously, we need to get to those members who are online, the packet, which we will do that today. That we didn't finish putting this book together till late last night. So we will create a PDF version of it, get that out to you. As individual members, you've seen the overview of shared services. the blue bar line that was handed out that shows the changes in shared services, as well as the changes that have happened in your individual fund. For those Slovisa members, you've also seen that we've met with. I know we have not met with Copperton yet, but we've seen Slovisa as a whole, how that affects Slovisa as a whole. Since Slovisa is our member, we try to separate this for memo purposes for our individual townships and communities. But again, it's organized the same as what you've seen the last few years. We've created a few extra packets for those of you who may have assistance that would like to. Again, this is the tentative budget. Once approved in June, we will put together the approved budget and have, copies of that available electronically, as well as in, paper form for those who need it. So this item of the agenda is simply for the board to tentatively adopt the tentative budget, and then we'll move on from there.
Thank you. I will be happy to entertain a motion to open the public hearing regarding the tentative budget.
What did you say?
So moved. Everyone is mesmerized by the budget. Second. Okay, I have a motion to open the public hearing regarding the adoption of the tentative budget. All in favor, please say aye. Oh, I apologize. I need a roll call vote. Harmony? We're going to keep you busy today.
Director Bradley. Director Bruns. Director Daly.
Aye.
Director Flint. Director Keeley.
Aye.
Director Litvak.
Aye.
Director Olson.
Aye.
Director Peterson.
Aye.
Director Prokopis.
Aye.
Director Silvestrini.
Aye.
Director Stevenson.
Aye.
We're opening the public hearing. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to comment regarding the tentative proposed budget?
I don't see anything else here.
I entertain a motion to close the public
I
hearing.
move to close the public hearing.
Thank you. All in favor to close the public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, moving on to our next agenda item, which is a board discussion and motion to tentatively adopt the tentative budget.
Madam Chair, I will move that we adopt resolution number 22-05-03, which is adopting the FY 2023 tentative budget. And with that, I would also include we set the time of the public hearing at our next regular board meeting in June.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
Madam Chair, Jeff Silvestrini, discussion to the motion. I'm supportive of this tentative budget, presuming that it is, the same as that we discussed in our one-on-one meeting with Lisa and the sheriff. And I'm supportive of the 5% cost of living and the targeted increases that we have are striving to make to keep us in the top 3. I have a reservation just because I haven't seen the materials, but I'm going to vote in favor of tentatively adopting the tentative budget with the idea that if we find any kind of discrepancy or anything like that, I'm going to raise that when we get to the further in these proceedings.
Thank you, Director Silvestrini. Any other comments?
I just want to make sure I'm clear on when in this process we would be looking at the specifics of it. Would it be at the finance committee meeting in June where we would talk about the fleet fund and the shared services fund, those sorts of things?
So our next agenda item is to have a discussion, more of a discussion about the tentative budget. So I will look to the sheriff and Lisa to target the areas that we want to focus on. I think what I've heard from them is they'd like to review the shared services new request increases, which is the additional sheet that was just handed out, as well as the ARPA request. So we will move into a conversation Mayor Dally, but I also believe that we will have some further discussion
Okay,
at
I
the
just
June
want to make
7th
sure you didn't miss something. but-
Budget and Finance Committee.
What Mayor Silvestri said, what Mayor suggested too, holds true for Lisa, that, you know, this is a tentative budget. It's all for discussion.
Yeah, the final budget and discussion around the final budget won't happen until our June meeting. So this is really an acceptance of a budget proposal from the sheriff's team and the UPD. And we will evaluate and have discussion moving forward before we adopt the final budget.
Can I call for the question? Because we have a motion and a.
Yes, we do. Thank you.
Second.
Harmony, will you please do roll call vote for this?
Director Bradley,
Aye.
Director Brems,
Aye.
Director Dally,
Aye.
Director Flint,
Aye.
Director Keegley, Director Litvak,
Aye.
Director Olson,
Aye.
Director Peterson,
Aye.
Director Prokopis,
Aye.
Director Silvestrini,
Aye.
Director Stevenson.
Aye.
Thank you, Sheriff and Lisa. We have tentatively adopted the tentative budget. We will move on to a discussion of that budget, and I'll turn the time over to you
Well, thank
to
you.
highlight the items you'd like to discuss today.
Okay, we appreciate that. I do want to make sure that those online did receive the shared services document.
I did. So thank you, Sheriff.
Because that's what we'll be discussing right now. Just want to make sure we're not missing anything. Okay, this is a proposal. I apologize, it's kind of dark on this side of the room, so I'm trying to see it find a good light. But I just wanted to know if there are any questions. Many of you, well, all of you, except for Dave Olson, have seen this document. And during our one-on-ones, there wasn't a lot of questions asked. I'm just wanting to know, is there questions that you have regarding this, or I can go through each one individual and explain it, if that would help.
What's the preference of the board?
Well, I have a question, but I would rather, Sheriff, you go through it then, because that might clarify it for me.
Okay, we're going to start with the first one, admin budget, the 500 budget. It shows 50,000 for overtime for the honor guards, dignitaries, UPD-wide emergencies. That is just asking for some overtime. As we have multiple requests throughout the year to attend special events, to attend funerals. We just need some extra funds because some of our employees want to get paid for those services rather than schedule adjust their schedules. So it really is something that is needed to continue that service. Now, if we don't have it, we will just pick and choose and not provide the service. We do get hit a lot with any dignitaries coming into Salt Lake City as the vice president or whoever else chooses dignitaries come to Utah. We get requests to provide that service as well with Salt Lake City.
Sure.
Yes.
Sorry, as we're going through this, could you give an idea of what is one time versus ongoing?
Time versus
Or
ongoing.
just as you're going through these items.
Yeah, yeah, so this would be an ongoing request. So that's a good point. The next one is 40,000 increased wages to myself and the undersheriff. This past November, this past budget for Salt Lake County, they did improve a wage increase for the undersheriff and myself. That is not, that's an ongoing, but that could change in December as well. We are not in the top 3 of our ranks. There are police chiefs that operate with a lot less employees that make a lot more than either one of us do. So I can imagine that will probably get bumped up every year, even if it's just the COLA. But that is an ongoing because it's an increase to our wages. And UPD does not pay for our entire wage. They just pay a portion of our wage. So. The next item is under community relations. This is a $5,000 request. It would be ongoing for overtime for our secondary assignments. What we've done here is, last year we were asked to make over $4 million cuts in shared services. What we did is we cut 2 officers out of our community relations unit. That left one sergeant and a portion of an employee. So the one sergeant is having to do all of the community relations, management, the cadet program, and be the PIO. So what we've come up with is a program where we have officers come out and be PIOs, their sergeant rank and above, to be PIOs as a secondary assignment, so she can take a vacation once in a while. And this is just to pay their overtime when they have to come out and do it. So that would be an ongoing. The 2,500 is an increase for Danny Bill. She's technically our graphic artist. We're working on changing her job description because she does a lot more than just our graphics. But she is a Salt Lake County employee, but UPD pays a portion of her services as well, just like myself and the under sheriff. See the next one, there was no change to internal affairs. Our insurance increases did go up. I believe that is an ongoing, but we never know whether they're going to go up or down, but they typically go up every couple of years. So that's an ongoing. Finance, HR, and legal, we have a 55,000 increase in number of employees who are reaching the 20 years with URS payment in lieu of OPED. That is probably a conversation that we need to have in the finance committee meeting, because that is an ongoing, but we don't know at this point, the employees who reach the 20 years. When the board made the decision, there were 2 different dates, so we're trying to go back and figure out what date was the effective date. Was it the 2014 date or the 2017 date that year? Because it would impact who gets paid out with that increase. And Harry is working on going back through, listening to the meeting to see how many employees actually qualify for this. So basically, when an employee reaches their 20 years, they get that payout, the $5,000 payout.
And the 20 years is with URS, not necessarily.
Not UPD. So that's where we need to make a decision. Do we want it to be a UPD 20-year or a URS? That's going to have to be a board decision. But right now, it would cost $55,000 for those employees who qualified under the board when the board made that decision. We're just trying to figure out which date the board intent was. So there's a surviving spouse trust fund that came through the state legislature. Every department has to pay $100 every year for any sworn eligible police officers. So that is just something that we have to pay every year. So it's $100 for every officer. And that was passed in the state legislature, I believe in 2020, was that correct?
Yeah, last July, we made the first payment.
The next one is $11,500 for new recruitment strategies. That one is, we're just trying to get people hired. That would be an ongoing as well as the other 2 that I just spoke of. And then the $30,000 is for the compensation study that the board has asked for. We usually try and do our own studies and provide you information that's available to us. But a true professional compensation study would be have a lot more information.
And that would be one time.
That's a one time. 20,000 for policy review and codification. That's a one time too, right? Is that?
Yes, it's one time, Harry, actually.
Okay. So that's a one-time. Then for our training, when we made all those cuts to shared services, we reduced our training unit down to 2 officers. This past legislative year, and what looks like more is coming from the federal government, is that we're required now to add an additional 16 hours per officer in areas of, gosh, I'm trying to figure out. Yeah, there's so much de-escalation, how to deal with the mentally ill. It's part of that police reform package, and they're requiring us to have this training. So with 2 officers for a department this size is not something that we want to continue. We do know that major lawsuits in law enforcement come from the training of the officers. They reflect on the training, and we want to make sure we have the best trained officers. So we are asking to reinstate the training sergeant, and that is where that 175,000 comes into play. Now that would be ongoing. That doesn't include the vehicle, right? Right. Okay. I think we'll get down. I don't see that on here. 23,000 anticipation of increase.
That would
Yeah,
include the
hires.
vehicle, so part of that
Okay,
is
that does.
ongoing and part of it is one time.
Okay.
Can you say that again, please?
Part of that amount,
Which amount? The
The-
175?
the training
175.
sergeant, yes, because there would be the purchase of a vehicle in it that we would have to transfer to the vehicle fund. But the wages and benefits then, and the other related expenditures would be ongoing.
And then 23,000 for anticipation of increase in the number of new hires with the amount of vacancies that we currently have. That would be ongoing. The range, 40,000 increase in purchase of firearms, weapons, and ammunition. The supply is still short and the costs have gone up. That would be an ongoing, and it could continue to go up. Let's see. This next one is
That's the generator.
okay, but you have 60,000 here.
Yeah, and 40 of it is this.
What is this?
That would be.
Okay, so this is actually a generator that Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office has. It's over at Oxbow Jail. The Sheriff's Office has purchased a new generator, so they don't need this generator. It's a very, very large generator. The Sheriff's Office has offered it up to UPD if they want it for the Special Ops building. Special Ops is where our evidence room is held. They've offered that up if they, rather than us surplus that, if UPD wanted to pay for the cost to reinstall it over there. So that's what that is. That would be a one-time cost. And if UPD did not want that, then the Sheriff's Office would just surplus that generator. In talking with Chief Dial, it would be very helpful to have a generator that could carry power for a lot longer in the event there's an emergency, because there's a smaller generator that is there now.
So the differential between the 69 and the 40, the 29,000, what is that for? And is that ongoing or one time?
That is just additional increases to the department, like others have, different increases. I just picked out for the note the most material in size. I will look into
Yeah,
that
I don't think that
29
counts.
and update that with the actual note.
Is that ongoing, the remainder?
Let me look at that
Okay.
and I will send that out.
Thank you.
Okay, then property and evidence, capital outlay for shelving, and that's a one-time, but again, there's 2 different numbers, operations and then the 18.
Right, same thing. There would be increases to the department for other things, but of that increase, 18 of it is for the shelving.
So we'll get in the notes with the other 10,000. Records, they are asking for 4,000 to replace the chairs in their division. Those chairs are very old, and I think that would be a great one-time purchase. The 184,000 increase to vet contract, that is an ongoing. However, with the vet contract, there is 53,000 of that is part of a litigation settlement, and it will have to be paid in a year increments, but in 2 years it will be paid off. So part of that is ongoing. Then our Axon contract, this is our body camera contract. It also includes our tasers and extensive training for the officers. That will be ongoing. 38,000 to our Active Directory is ongoing. And then 99,000 increases to software contracts is also ongoing.
Going back to the VEC contract, the litigation settlement, the 53,000 you mentioned. Is it 53,000 this year and 53
Yes.
next year? We're
Yes.
not funding it all up front.
No,
right.
Okay. So 2 years.
2 years, 1 year increments.
Thank you.
The radio shop is 202,000. And that is, when we cut the shared services, we delayed our rotation of our computers and our radios, and we really need to get in rotation again, or we're not going to be able to function. That would be ongoing for the rotation. So that's not a one-time. And then 60,000 replaces the NICE system. We do share that with Salt Lake County. And basically, this is just a decision whether UPD wants to, what kind of service they want from this system. The NICE system records dispatch recordings and radio traffic. So when detectives need a copy, or we get a grandma request for copies, or our internal affairs need copies, we use that system. Dispatch does have a system that's similar to this that we can use. It just doesn't give all of the same information. It's only through whatever dispatch records. So our suggestion is to continue with the upgrades to the NICE system. But that's a decision by UPD whether they want to continue with that one.
Is that a one-time project, or does it
That
have an
is.
ongoing expense?
That's a one-time, correct? Okay, and then the shared service support of the mental health sergeant, who is the administrator, it's not much, it's 3,505.
That's operations.
Oh,
Wages
okay.
and benefits are separated
Okay,
out.
so where am I looking at to give them the full?
The total amount is right here. The
Okay,
safety
the
board,
50
or 56.
It's 56,000, and really what that is taking 30% of Sergeant Sampson's wage and charging it to UPD, because when we moved her to countywide, the functions were to be countywide, spread across the board. What we have found is she is still doing UPD cases at about a 30% level. So in order to make it fair, we need to have UPD pay a portion of her wage. UPD precincts have talked about adding additional mental health officers into their precincts as well, but this is different. She coordinates all the case management. She assigns out the cases, so it can't be done at the officer level. We have sergeants that do that function, so it's just paying a 30% of her wage, which would be an ongoing. No changes to.
No material changes. If there are no material changes, the operational increases really deal with gas and the vehicle replacement charge, that this will be the third year of getting that back up to the correct level.
And wages.
Mhm.
Okay, and then we have forensics. Flat overall budget reflects 2022 contributed Cellbrite. So this is just a Cellbrite software that we use to download cell phones, but we had a grant that covered that charge, so it comes out to $279. Crossing guards, there's really no change, but they're in addition, but the 9,471 is increases to wages. Now here we get to the public order unit, and I may have Chief Mazarin ask any questions that you have on this. He has been coordinating with all of the other police agencies in Salt Lake County to create this public order unit. In the event we have another 2020. When we did 2020, we found that our patrol officers that were responding don't have the training that is needed to keep that type of order in a riot. So that all the agencies across, well, actually it's across the state, but we're only working with the ones in Salt Lake County to create these teams that would respond. What we found is that in 2020, some of the agencies are being sued now because of their response. They didn't have the training, they didn't have the tools, they didn't have the equipment. And it was suggested that we do this as a countywide. All the agencies come together and each have their own teams. And then when we deploy them out, everybody will have the same training, same equipment. And that is what this proposal is. It's the 109,000, and that includes basically their equipment and their training.
And the overtime.
Yeah, and the overtime that they would have to train and if we need to respond. SWAT.
I have a question about that, because I fully recognize the need for this and not opposed to it, but my only question is the timing on it, just given the other aspects that we have in a tough budget year. Do we have commitments from other agencies that they are actually going to be funding this year or not? Because this is something that I know we need, but it is also something that we could conceivably defer a year or two.
You want to talk to that, Chief?
Yeah, so as part of the executive committee for public order, we currently have 5 platoons, and each platoon consists of a number of squads. Where UPD's at in terms of our evolution, back during the Olympics, we had a public order unit when we were the sheriff's office. And we were well trained and equipped. That fell off and nothing happened for a number of years. After 2020, we learned a lot of hard lessons, and we realized we're just one bad deal away from having to deploy that asset. So we're trying to get it back up and running. Where we're at in terms of training and equipment, we've made some progress. We've been able to use some grant monies, but we're really behind West Valley, Salt Lake City, some of the other groups, Highway Patrol. We've got quite a ways to go, but we're working really hard to get there because, again, I think after 2020, the likelihood of having an event like that again is much higher than it was previous to 2020. People kind of decided that's a legitimate way to air their grievances. So we're trying to be prepared. We've got a few people on the unit that now have just enough equipment to safely deploy, but they don't have the full kit. And so some of what's being asked for, the first aid equipment, the munitions that are necessary, the training is a huge part, as the sheriff talked about. That's where you get in trouble if you don't have people properly trained. Communication earpieces, when you have all that equipment on, a gas mask, some of those things, you have to be able to talk to each other. That's a huge component of moving formations and being able to safely move the crowd. So we're working on it, but we just need to get where we can legitimately deploy to any one of your communities, because as we've seen, this could happen anywhere. We saw it Provo, we saw it Colorado Heights, we saw it the city, obviously seems to be a focus point, but even here in UPD, we had some events during 2020 in Taylorsville and Kearns. A small situation up in Holiday with some students. So we just want to be ready, and that's kind of where we're at right now. We're just trying to advance this a little bit further, get us prepared.
I think the
Thank you.
question from Mayor Silvestrini, and I would have too, is, so you mentioned Cottonwood Heights, they're participating,
Yes,
and everybody's gonna share the cost of providing individuals as part of this force should it be called upon. It's not just gonna be a cost that we're gonna bear to provide service to other communities that aren't going to have this cost to support them. I guess that's a question. So South Jordan and West Jordan and Cottonwood Heights and Draper, they're all gonna have some individuals committed to this, and they'll have budget impacts as well. Okay.
yeah, so what the committee's trying to do is create uniformity in training, uniformity in communication and equipment. Everybody's responsible for their own equipment training, and that's what you see reflected here in this budget. But the idea is if we have an event, or even worse, what we saw in 2020 is we have multiple events. We have to get everybody to come together and all speak the same language. So the good thing is, if we can get our public order unit up and running, we can call on others to come assist us should we need it. We only have 22 assigned members to our public order unit. And depending on the size of the event, we can get a forum.
Just a quick question. Are we going to have to establish protocols on when and how we deploy service?
Absolutely, very strict protocols on that and how that's done. Public order is never the front-facing group during one of these events because that can be inflammatory. Public order is what you pull out when it's starting to go really bad and property's getting damaged and people are getting hurt. That's where you have to have the public order and you pull everybody else out.
I presume those would be brought forward some sort of approval.
We could certainly do that. We could come do a presentation and share with you what some of those protocols are and when the public order unit's participation is triggered. What happens is public order still shows up, but they're sequestered away and they're on standby on every one of these kind of protests or events.
I can comment that I appreciated the public order unit during some of the downtown issues as having a house about a block away. That group really worked diligently to move the crowd in a specific direction and disperse. And it was a fearful time in our neighborhood. And it was a really important component and very well handled. I would Director Flynn.
My concern is ties into what Director Daly was talking about, as far as there are many times when we say, oh yes, we're going to go out and help our neighborhood communities, but these other police forces outside of our organization, since they're not members, we develop an agreement with them to participate and accept liabilities, because when we go out in other neighborhoods, most of it is we bear the brunt and nobody's paying on the other side of that. So it's just like the jail issue for years. They use it, but they don't pay for it. And you can't get the money out of it. So the big concern is, are we taking on, when we go beyond the scope of this organization, will there be some kind of an agreement between those other entities to commit to helping share costs?
So there's two agreements in place right now. We have a mutual aid agreement, which is a 50-year agreement that would come into play here because it'd be an emergency situation. And there's also a memorandum of understanding for public work that's being circulated right now and signed by participating members.
And
But
all
we're
the
responsible
valley,
for our own costs.
all the valley attorneys are reviewing that agreement. So every police department has their own attorneys who are all looking at that agreement right
Just
now.
want to make sure we have cover.
Yeah, we do, and we've done this. It's similar to, like, we have our OICI, the Officer Involved Critical Incident Teams that go out. It's similar to that agreement. They get deployed out, but everybody shares resources. And the same with our car team, the one that goes out and investigates all the major car crashes. Everybody has people in those teams. All the departments participate, and we have agreements with them. So it's just similar to that. It's just called a public order. And the agreement will include highway patrol, U of U. Those are the different agencies that will be part of this versus our OICI teams and our CAR teams. But we do this all the time. It's a shared service amongst all the departments. We're just responsible for our own equipment, our own overtime, and our own training. But they will train together, but we have to pay for our own costs. And then when they get deployed, it's just on an as needed basis. So if we have something here, all of those teams would be deployed to help us. But if it happens in Salt Lake, we would get deployed out there. But this really will help because in 2020, we just all went, all the agencies went to Salt Lake. Nobody got reimbursed for all of the time and effort that was put into it. So this will help manage that to where not every single law enforcement officer is going to get deployed out there. It'll be very well managed, and we'll be able to, you know, account for those costs. And the fairness comes into, if it's an emergency, it's mutual aid, we just do it. But we're working on all that. We can do a presentation. It's just the agreement is still with the attorneys trying to figure out how you incorporate all those agencies. It's just like a shared service and similar to the UPD model.
Hey, sure. Could I just add just a good way to think about it? It's similar to SWAT. They're both tactical units. They would both fall under the same guidelines and rules should an emergency occur. And if mutual aid is requested, that agreement would come into place. So it's really kind of the same thing, just two different missions.
If
I could,
I'm sorry.
I'm just going to address one thing. The agreement that we're looking at is actually organized mutual aid, which is better than what I would call disorganized mutual aid. Not that it's ever disorganized, but what we're doing here is responding to the fact that the best way to respond is to keep your people together under your command in a way where they're not showing up, individually and coming into a situation that's unknown, that can be dangerous for officers and also lead to circumstances that are unfavorable versus an organized response. So this is actually a best practice. A training a few weeks ago in Nashville put on by the International Association of Chiefs of Police, and the best practice is what we're doing now. Have organized units to deal with this rather than having officers responding on a 1033 because somebody needs help. So I think in terms of risk management and in terms of cost management, this is far and away the best way to do this. And I think a lot of departments learned lessons in 2020 about responding because somebody needs help versus an organized response. This is codifying that so other people will be involved. They're making commitments. They're all going to have the same type of equipment. So some people aren't going to have shields, some aren't. It's a way to unify a response, coordinate a response with certain team leaders. And I'm actually highly in favor of this, particularly when I found out about the best practices. This is it. So I would strongly encourage the board to fund this. I think it's going to keep our people safer. I think it's going to keep the public safer. And I also think it's nationwide, the direction everyone's going in terms of the lessons learned from 2020 about how you respond to public disorder.
I know we're going to get to the end, but I think it's the same question that ties back to the first line item of the $50,000 of overtime for honor guards. And I would have the same question about that. And Sheriff, you mentioned that when dignitaries come into Salt Lake City, our honor guard goes to participate.
It could be our honor guard, it could be our motors, it could be other members of UPD. It depends on what the assignment is. So say when, if the vice president were to come again, we've had several people come there.
And we're reimbursed for that.
No.
So I think this gets to the point, and I don't want to drag it out, but, and I think Director Flint, this is what she was getting at, Mayor Silvestrini, is we belong to this organization because we can provide those very things, that we can have a SWAT access and K9 access and honor guard access, and we can participate in this public sorry, I forgot the name, the public response. And we all see value in that, and we share that cost. And then other entities look at that shared cost and say, well, I don't know if I'm getting anything out of it, they leave. And they don't have to bear any of the burden of providing that service. And so all the members of this organization get to pay for our honor guard to go deal with dignitaries. And it just seems, and that's why I was asking Chief about this $199,000. I don't disagree with what Harry said at all. I just want to make sure everybody else is participating countywide in that service. Otherwise, we are disadvantaged. We get to pay for all that shared services function, and all these other little entities that have separated get to focus all of their policing on just community-specific policing activities. And that seems unfair to me. And so I just want to make sure that if it's a countywide service, everybody's sharing in it. I mean, I even had somebody ask me about somebody who had separated wanting to contact us about contracting for our shared services support. I'm like, why would we want, I mean, am I crazy, or is it like, well, anyway, I think that was the point is, I don't mind paying for it. I just want to make sure everybody else is too, that so if we respond to some incident and I'm not going to, we respond to some incidents in Cottonwood Heights, since that one came up, that they have a pro rata investment in that response, not UPD gets to pay for it and we get to respond to their incident because they don't see it. They don't see any value in investing in these occurrences that may occur every now and again. We're not willing to pay for it. If that makes any sense.
In the agreement.
Okay.
That should be in the agreement. We haven't had any issues with our OICI team or our CAR team. It's all been fair the way that works. So I really don't want it confused with the honor guard, because the honor guard and dignitaries and UPD-wide emergencies, we can break that more down for you more of how much overtime is really for the honor guard. It's not necessarily the honor guard that would go to Salt Lake in the event the vice president came. The honor guard is the reason we need overtime for them is because they do a lot of funerals, they do a lot of events. Many of you call us and ask, hey, you know, a dignitary in your own city has passed away. Can we have an honor guard? That's what the honor guard overtime is. And we can spell it out better for you here. And then the dignitary issue is dignitaries, it doesn't matter where they go, what city, we always get a request to assist. It's an honor for us to do that, but yeah, there is a cost, and that's why we can break that down as well. And then UPD-wide emergencies, we're just guessing on a dollar amount there. We don't know when there's going to be a major emergency, but we do know the money that we have available for emergencies right now. We're just asking for more, but we can break that first line down for you so you have a better picture of what each one is. And then the public order unit is totally separate than that one.
Hey, Sheriff, can I just throw something out? Just that what the sheriff just touched on, I think is really important. It's kind of our UPD insurance policy in that admin line, and you know, we cut that. It was too thin. But what I'm really concerned about, for instance, this year, especially if we have a fire, we have to call people out and we have to support a major response to an event. I'm worried about fires in the canyons and other places. You know, we're seeing that kind of shape up. If we have a public order event or we have a SWAT event, similar to what we had in Mill Creek, we have to throw tons of manpower at it. That we have that insurance policy so it doesn't deplete your overtime in your own precincts. You can still utilize that for your precinct needs. So it's really an insurance policy for, you know, if we have. You know, we've had some really bad events in years past. It's been kind of quiet recently. Yes, but you know, that's to protect your precinct overtime budgets to make sure we can throw whatever we need in a problem and fix it. I think that's a really important part of that overtime.
A couple of specific examples are the 2020 riots downtown and the earthquake in Magna.
Sorry.
No, I think these are.
Sorry, I'm not
No,
sorry.
I think
This
these
is
are
why we're
important.
having this.
This is important.
This is super good for us.
An important conversation. I like the term insurance policy, because it's not just us helping others, it's also them helping us in events where we would need that support.
Yeah,
I don't know how proportional that is, but that's the question.
that's my point is, I think mutual aid's great. I just want to make sure that we're not disproportionately providing mutual aid because we have more strategic investment in those assets and other people maybe do not. And I just don't want to fund that, I guess is what I'm saying.
So maybe an accounting of how many times are we being asked versus we asking? Are we getting equal response from others? Or is that, it's like, I can tell you right now without naming situation where we live in the heart of another community. That other community has always got police vehicles sometimes in my neighborhood. We don't get information. Our precinct isn't informed. So we just see them there. But so I don't see the communication between various other police departments with UPD and our sheriffs as it should be. If I call and say, why do we have this agency in my community at a house doing a SWAT action in my neighborhood? At least our chief and our officers need to be informed, and that's not happening. So I don't see equal reciprocal behavior.
We can take care of that issue fairly with.
That's what it comes down to.
Councilman Pope. Board Member Pocobus has a question, I think. His hand is up.
Director Prokopis, do you have a question, sir?
Yeah, I'd just like to add, I see great value in it. I understand that being the largest organization, we're going to be able to contribute more in an emergency than most agencies. If I have a riot in Magna, UPD can give me 100 public order unit officers, whereas South Salt Lake might only be able to send me 6, and vice versa. If South Salt Lake needs us, I know the Brotherhood, and Sisterhood, they will respond. I just think this board needs to hear that somebody's going to keep an eye on it, that it doesn't get too far out of whack, and that we are not being taken advantage of, and I would be good with that.
And we can provide updates. We actually should maybe include our officer involved shooting and our car team too, so you can see the benefit of having those teams. And we can do a presentation in another board meeting. To continue on, there is an increase for our drone program. We do have a drone program that we started, and we've been funding it through grants, but we're seeing such a great benefit. We would like to get a couple more drones for the drone program, and Chief Master can talk about that if anybody has any questions on it.
Is that a one-time to purchase new drones, or is that an ongoing?
The drone purchase would be one time, and then some of the other expenses would be ongoing call outs.
So do you know what percentage of the 23.5 is one time versus ongoing?
I can tell you.
If you'd like, I can bring to a board meeting. You should see some of the drone footage we've already captured with a couple of drones we have. It's an incredible technology.
Included in there is a software, that's one time, that's only $3,500. The rest would be, I think, ongoing, because that would include training, certification, things like that. So it looks like only the software itself is the one time.
And then the next item is our SWAT. The $10,000 SWAT ammo and munitions has gone up. There is a difference of $145,000. And Chief Master can speak to that. With the SWAT increases, are those wages?
And of that 145, 45,000, and I'm rounding, 46,000 is wages. 17,000 of benefits. The 82,000 includes, we already talked about the drone program, the ammo, and then the avatar, the robot, and long-range night vision. Those would be one-time purchases.
Right, and we did lose our robot in that Mill Creek incident, so we do need to replace the robot. That major incident that we had. Next is K-9, no change, not material change anyway. It's just the wages and the benefits. Same with the motors, wages, benefits, and the vehicle.
The 48,000 of ops fee.
The operations for K-9, is that in the book?
Oh, that is going to include, well, we have 5 officers. So that means we have 5 vehicles, and we would have their gasoline, their vehicle, all their vehicle charges for 5 officers. That's a transfer to other funds. That was a 1-year transfer in the current year. So it's a reduction of a budgetary need in this upcoming year. That is the transfer to the precinct funds for the distribution of the PEHP rebate that the board approved to go to the civilians.
So looking at this in summary, it's fair to say that the wages and benefits are ongoing expenses. In the operational line, I think it might be helpful to the
Yes,
board
and
to differentiate between what is an ongoing operational expense versus a one-time operational expense.
Yeah.
So we understand the long-term impact to the budget.
right. And included in that operational expense is the increase in gas and the vehicle replacement charge. And so we can rework this spreadsheet to show that information. I think that is a good suggestion.
And we can get that out fairly quickly. And I know Mayor Silvestrini left the meeting for a few. I saw some things in the chat, but I don't know. I didn't have the chance to read them if he had anything.
Okay, I have his notes. Nothing that we need to address right this minute.
Is there any more questions on this shared services piece? If not, we can jump into the ARPA.
I do have a question, and I don't know if I was missing something here. On the sheet you have here, it shows the total amount is the 23,313,000. In the budget, it shows 23,757,000. So we've got a few $100,000. Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I'll have to take a look at that. I don't know the difference off the top of my head. So let me take a look at that. And I can get back to you on that.
On the ARPA funds, we just,
Can I ask a quick question before we dive into the ARPA funding? This is all baked into the base tentative budget, correct?
Yes.
Are the ARPA requests baked into the?
they are
base?
not.
Okay, so that's the difference.
That's the difference.
All right.
And the ARPA funding we put in the back because we don't have any. So each one of you operate different, each one of you know how you want to spend it. So we put it in the back because we really didn't know where to put it in the budget. But it is in the budget book as part of the budget, but it's just information for you. We don't even know if they qualify because we don't have ARPA funds, so we don't know what qualifies.
So if a member gives you the ARPA funding from your account or a portion of it, then that decreases those expenses. But then after that, those expenses, the remaining in the project, will they go into the budget?
Yeah, they could. Yeah, they could end up ongoing like mental health and wellness program. Right now, we have a grant, we just submitted for another grant. But if, you were to fund it through ARPA funds, it could be an ongoing, however long you want the program. The mobile command center would be a one-time purchase of the mobile command center. but we would still have to maintain it, so there would be a small cost to that. And then the crossing guard initiative that we thought might fall under ARPA, we really we didn't receive any funds on it, so we're not able to identify exactly what would qualify, because it seems like every entity is doing ARPA different. I can bring in the information of the way the county's doing it, but I don't really know about each of your entities, how you will disperse it.
So let me ask the question, maybe this will help. So is it a fair statement to say that everything that's baked into the budget is a higher priority
Yes,
than these are?
absolutely.
Okay. If, so that none of these would be a higher priority than what's in here?
No.
Okay.
We are also working on grants for body cameras. We just don't have all the information yet. We are working on grants for vests, for the mental health wellness. There's a whole bunch of grants coming out of the DOJ right now. The problem with the grants is they are very different from the previous grants we had, because they want matches for every grant. So it will cost us money to start these new programs that the grants are asking us to put in a suggestion for a new program. But our mental health wellness program is already established. We're just hoping we can get a grant to continue funding that. And we're working.
For the answer to Mayor Stevenson's question is, the difference is grants that have a matching revenue, so they have a net effect to our member, and secondary employment, which is the same thing. That's the difference that's included in the larger number for shared services, because it doesn't have an impact on our members. We didn't show it as a change in here. So if you look at Department 10506, you'll see an $89,000 department total for secondary employment. And if you look at 10508, you'll see 355,000 for grant expenditures. Both of those have matching revenues, so they don't impact our members.
So this amount that's a little lower is the true cost
To our
to
members,
the members.
right? But we had to include these grant and secondary employment expenditures, or we couldn't make those expenditures. But they do have offsetting revenues.
Other questions from the board related to the ARPA request? If we don't know for sure if these are ARPA eligible, my preference would have been that these would have been put in as a new request for a shared service, because most of them are a shared service. The mobile command center is a one-time expense that we would all share in the cost one time as a capital need, I guess is what I would call it. The mental health program, I mean, I just, if it's not a priority enough to be put into the base budget, that's where I was coming from when we had this conversation at a previous meeting, is that we would embed these within the top priorities of the agency and let us know where they rank as far as importance for need, so we could make an evaluation about where we fund and what we don't fund. Director Flint.
On the ARPA funds, we just recently, within the last week or so, were told that we can now spend them on anything. We knew that was coming. It's just too hard to restrict them to one type of thing like flood control. I don't see that it's the mobile command center. If the one that we have doesn't work, and if we need it out in the field, it becomes a critical part of providing service and keeping our officers safe and in connect with communications right where the incident is happening. And I think that is probably one of the most important things, that we would be willing to take some of our ARPA money and cost share and buying that mobile command center. It's a one-time deal. So I think the priority on on your requests there. For me, that's a biggie, and I don't think the contribution is that great from each and every one of us. So,
I would want to hear from command staff that the other one doesn't work.
Yeah, it works.
Well, then why
we
would you
use
buy
it.
another one?
Well, we would love to have the most innovative command post out
well,
there.
they can't buy parts for the,
But, you know, the one that we have is old. But I wouldn't say it's a higher priority than some of these on this list, because what we're asking on this list is, you know, like a training sergeant. When they increased our training by 16 hours per officer, that is a higher priority than the command post. The mental health and wellness is a priority for me for our officers, but we also just submitted for a grant, so that would move it down. And then the crossing guards, the same thing. It all would bump, it'd be at the very, very bottom. Our biggest concern is when we meet with you guys and you see the shared service costs and they go way up, just like this $3 million, it puts everybody in a panic of thinking they need to find a way to make this work. But these are just requests, these are tentative, but members don't always understand that.
Well, I think Sheriff, I think my position is, and I would like to meet again to go over this and fleet, and not in this group because I think I'm taking way too much time, but a general comment I would have is I'm not qualified to prioritize these issues. I just don't know. I'm not a police officer. What I do know is the budgets that we are looking at are huge.
Right.
And I would hope that that you'd be able to come back, or the agency would come back, and as it relates to this $3 million of operational increases, I'd like to know what is absolutely necessary that we have to operate safely. And what would be really nice to have. And I would hope that we would say the nice stuff has got to go to another year, because we need to prioritize the COLA and we need to prioritize the merits for our employees. Those are the most important things that need to be protected, but we need to do we've got an issue in our chiefs come with us and needs another detective because of the increases in the mental health impacts on our community from changes we made in shared services. We think it's absolutely justified. But I'll go back to our council and say, I think it needs to be prioritized, but that $200,000, you got to go find it somewhere else, because we cannot keep just adding on. And I think that's what the mayor's concerned with, his implication is that these adding on to these ongoing services are putting tremendous pressure on these budgets. So, but it's hard for me
Understood.
to prioritize these things. I don't know how to do that. I have
That's
to
why I
leave that
asked
to.
that question specifically, and I think, Mayor, what you articulated as the priority for this agency is the wages, the benefits, the COLA, right? So from my standpoint, a good chunk of what's down here at the bottom related to wages and benefits ongoing is gonna be a priority. It's 1.3 of the 3 million, right? The 1,700 operational expenses, prioritizing what's a priority as it relates to one-time needs and other things would be very helpful for the board to deliberate that. I would say on the wages and benefits, however, if it's a new FTE, we would want to understand the importance of that FTE, because that it wouldn't be baked into the wages and benefit increase that we've discussed previous related to the COLA and the shifts for the market. So it's breaking those things out a little bit so we can evaluate them independently and understand, like you're saying, from a need of what's a have to have versus a nice to have. So we can better evaluate that. It's why in our county process, any new requests have to be prioritized in priority order. And a justification needs to be given as to why they're needed. It's more complicated here because we all share in those expenses. And so we all have to agree and align about what our priorities are and what we want.
Yeah, I just hope that, at some point, I think we'll meet individually again. I don't want to take any more time, but yeah, that 1.7 million is what I'm focused on, and going through that and having staff really prioritize what you see as absolute needs of this organization that are going to affect how we deliver service safely, that we don't put our officers at risk. And the command center is a perfect example, $465,000, and I'm just telling you right now, it's not an absolute need. I say move it to another year because there's just, it's too, I mean, I think our budget's up, 20% over the year prior before we put the mid-year adjustments in place. I know other agencies have higher increases than that. And so I just think we need to make sure that we personally put the absolute needs in place, and the stuff that would be really, really nice waiting for another year.
Director Flynn? The only reason I brought up the command centers, because when it was first brought up to us in a meeting just like this, it was explained that you can't get parts to repair the vehicle in order to even keep it operational. So if you can't do that, and I'm talking one-time monies that I can spend on roads if I need to, but the issue we have is I wouldn't make that recommendation if it wasn't important. One of the other things you say you want drones, well, that's a one-time purchase. Is there something we can purchase to enhance your ability to do your job instead of, if it is a one-time cost? That's why prioritizing this, as Mayor Dally said, to absolute must have, if it comes to salaries, wages, and performance of duty. If it's a wish list, like I tell my kids, tell me one thing you wish for and one thing you need. That's how I can fund Christmas. I can't just do everything. So the issue there is, it does need to be that there's three things driving this problem. The shared services for other communities and the concern that we're willing to go do those things and not get reimbursed. We can't absorb those things anymore. They have to be paid for by all participants. You can't be the sugar daddy to every community in the valley. And if they want it, once they leave, they need it, they need to pay for it. So I'm a strong supporter of, in the instance of policing, having valley-wide police. Because we're all competing and for the workforce, and we're really not, we're losing out because there's a lack of communication. I don't care what year it is. I moved here in 1982 and I heard the same story. 1990s, being involved in communities, heard the same story. I'm still hearing the same story. There hasn't been a proper fix to the attitude of what the needs are and the jockeying between mine is better than yours. It's just has to come to an end. But we also can't finance it, that we're at the end of our ropes. I'm willing to go out and walk the streets to get more money and raise the taxes. But just nickel and diming and trying to find the money, not willing to do, but setting those priorities. This has been very helpful, but we do need a little bit more detail and sort it by number one priorities, number twos, and
Yes.
I will, I've got ideas on how to, present this in a little bit more, in a different fashion that would show that. Another thing, we did an analysis, not too terribly long ago regarding the new budget, the upcoming budget, the difference in gas from the current year to next year for the organization as a whole, not just shared services, is $1 million. So part of this 1.7, a large part of that 1.7 is going to be gasoline, and then the third year of the vehicle replacement charge, getting it up. But I will definitely rework this and get this out to you today.
Right.
I'll send it to Harmony for distribution to all so that you can better understand that 1.7.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I'm gonna do it anyway. I just want to reiterate what's been said here. The ranking would be incredibly helpful. Where Midville is at is specifically trying to reduce our shared services by 500,000. that would get us closer to those original numbers that were presented. But as has been stated, I don't feel comfortable coming and saying this is what we should cut. And so the ranking would be incredibly helpful.
We can rank, and one thing that we can do also is there's some things that it's not a priority. It's more, well, it is a priority, but we have to have it.
Yeah.
We don't, if our vet costs went up, we have to have it. So we're not asking for all kinds of special things, but we can rank it. It's just really difficult to say, is our dispatch contract more important, you know, than the surviving spouse trust fund that legislators said we have to have. So I don't, you know, to be able to prioritize that, we might break those out and say these things just have to be done to continue. The only two really new things were the public order unit and the drones, and then the training sergeants. So, but we can do that. We'll do our best to prioritize.
Sorry, I think part of this would be really helpful. Some of those mandates. What do we have to fund?
Yeah, like the have tos and the like to haves. Yeah.
Because and I also want to say, I don't think we're putting an easy job on you to have to rank. I just think you all are the experts, and so you'll know better than us, even if it's not.
But yeah, as a board, we also have to remember that a proportional share of what we've decided around COLA and shifts in salaries is baked into the shared services. So if we're looking, we can't just cut shared services on a wages and benefits component without looking across the board. So it's just understanding the nuance of our shared services components.
So,
Yes.
so it seems to me that we have like 3 different charts. One that is just due to the inflation, gas. And the other one is mandates. And then priority as far as new additional.
And also we have like the getting back onto the rotation plan for the computers, the radios, the other issues with supply chain that have made it very difficult for finding ammunition. Those things are restoring things that are part of UPD, not necessarily new, but getting us back on track because they were put on hold in order to keep the shared service costs down.
So with that, with those items, it would be kind of like if I'm looking at my house is falling apart, you know, the plumbing is going out and the paint is chipping off and the doors are not closing. And obviously, as an individual, I can't do all of them this year. So what is my priority list? This first has a higher priority. Maybe my plumbing is the most important. And then the paint is going to have to wait. So plumbing first, doors shut, and then the following, the third year, I'll do the painting. One second, you know what I mean? So they would have also a priority, it seems to me, based on your knowledge, what needs to, how are we time getting those back in place?
I think we've given some direction about some additional information we need. We're way over time, everyone. So, but I appreciate the conversation because I think it's critically important that we spend the time that we need to understand this budget the best we can and make these decisions in the best way we can, put public safety at top of priority. So, moving on to our next agenda item, which is our upcoming meetings, the budget and finance meeting. I know we have a committee for that, but welcome anybody from the board to join us for that meeting because we can have some deeper dive conversations as it relates to the budget. And I know Lisa and the sheriff are more than happy to meet with any groups individually to have additional conversations as well. We have the Office of the Sheriff Awards Ceremony on Wednesday, the 8th at 10 a.m. We have this Lavisa workshop that was mentioned today on Thursday, July 14th. Any questions or any meetings that are missing from the agenda that I'm not aware of? Yes.
I just wanted to point out those that are not press, Lisa, if you want to come, look at the time frame. It's from 10 to 2.
Okay. Thank you. So everyone's welcome to attend that, whether you belong to Lavisa or not. Moving on to item number 10, we have the minutes. Specifically, Mayor Silvestrini made a note related to the minutes, that Director Flynn was not present at the last meeting, but she was, so we need to make that correction, please, in the minutes. Any other corrections? Deletions, additions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, okay. Agenda item 11, moving on. Harry, are you available to still brief us in closed session? I need a motion to go into closed session, please.
So moved.
All in favor, is that a roll call? Thank you. Harmony, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Director Bradley.
Aye.
Director Bruns. Director Dolly. Director Flynn. Director Keithley. Director Lipa. Director Olson. Director Peterson. Director Jacobus.
Aye.
Director Silvestrini. Director Stevenson.
Okay.